Hello, we are Eric, Johanna, and Katarina, and we would like to present our findings from reproducing decoupling, feature extraction, and classification layers for calibrated neural networks. The original paper, written by Jordahn and Olmos, proposes a novel two-stage training procedure for improved calibration of deep neural networks and classification tasks. Usually, the training of feature extraction layers and classification layers occurs jointly, but they propose decoupling the training of the feature extraction and classification layers. They present two variations of the so-called two-stage training method, namely two-stage training, TST, and variational two-stage training. In TST, the model is first trained from scratch using cross-entropy loss. And then in the second stage, the parameters of the feature extraction layers are frozen, and the classification layer is replaced by an MLP classification head, whose size is determined by the latent dimension Z, or which could just be the last layer itself, reinitialized. And then this classification head or layer is retrained from scratch using the same dataset. Variational TST is an extension of TST that uses elbow as an objective function during training in the second stage. We reproduced most of the main results of the original paper by training a WRN model on Cypher10 and Cypher100 datasets. Our reproduction of the VTST and TST models showed similar performance to the original paper's results across metrics such as accuracy, expected calibration error, maximum calibration error, and negative log likelihood. We also extended the original paper's results by including the Brier score.
In addition to reproducing the main results, we also performed several ablation studies. We found that the two-stage training approach is largely transferable to other CNN architectures like ResNet and EfficientNet, although the effectiveness varies depending on the architecture. We also tested whether increasing the number of Monte Carlo samples during VTST training or changing the number of classification head layers improved calibration, but found it to be less effective on performance than finding a good value for the latent dimension Z. Additionally to that, we also found that balancing the classification head layers and the latent dimension Z is crucial. Lastly, we extended the findings of the original paper by also exploring combining two-stage training with other regularization techniques like focal loss. And this is something that the authors of the original paper proposed. Our results show that using focal loss only in the first stage and CE loss in the second stage leads to an improved calibration, whereas using focal loss in both stages or the second stage only worsened calibration. This can also be seen when looking at the reliability diagrams. When comparing the base models trained with focal loss and CE loss with their corresponding VTST extension using the same loss function, we observed a deterioration of calibration for the focal loss VTST model, whereas the VTST with CE loss in both stages improved calibration compared to the base VRN. We also investigated other regularization techniques apart from focal loss, such as L2 and label smoothing. In summary, our findings for combining two-stage training with other regularization techniques are the following. All regularization methods improve the calibration of the base VRN. Using additional implicit regularization in both stages of training tends to perform worse than the CE baseline or the corresponding base model before the second stage. Third, combining two-stage training with additional regularization can either enhance or degrade calibration, depending on the regularization and in which stages it's integrated. Lastly, applying focal loss only to the base model followed by TST or VTST using CE loss resulted in better calibrated models compared to the baseline. In summary, our study confirmed that two-stage training improves calibration performance, and we also showed that combining TST or VTST with other regularization methods can enhance calibration, but that its effectiveness depends heavily on the specific technique used and when it's applied. Thank you for listening, and for more details, we refer to our paper.